Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top stories that we're tracking for you this evening. The Lal Street down for the sixth day. The Sensex and the Nifty lose 3% this week, marking the biggest decline in 6 months. All sectoral indices close in the red. The Nifty IT index down 8%. President Trump announces 100% tariffs on patented and branded drugs not manufactured in the US. No impact on India's generics industry, barring select players like Sun Pharma. Also imposes 50% tariffs on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities and a 30% tariff on upholstered furniture, citing unfair competition. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal returns after a 3-day visit to the US, his first since 50% tariffs were imposed. The ministry says the delegation held constructive meetings and both sides agreed to continue the engagement to achieve an early conclusion of a trade deal. JSW Steel will retain Bhushan Steel after the Supreme Court overturns its own decision in a landmark verdict. The apex court rules the purpose of the bankruptcy code was achieved and it would be disastrous to undo the 20,000 crore rupee deal. India's largest FMCG company, Hindustan Unilever, expects flat to low single-digit growth in Q2, cites competitive pricing after GST cuts to drive consumption, says orders are being postponed in anticipation of new stock with updated prices. In a bid to woo first-time car buyers, Maruti Suzuki plans an EMI scheme at just under 2,000 rupees. The move follows unprecedented response since the GST cuts, with bookings for small cars surging 50%. The Telangana government to take over the first phase of the Hyderabad Metro from L&T. The state will pay 2,000 crore rupees to the company for equity and absorb 13,000 crore rupees in debt. President Trump signs an executive order to transfer TikTok's US business to American ownership. Vice President Vance values the business at $14 billion. Oracle, Silver Lake and Rupert Murdoch will be the key investors. No representatives from Chinese parent ByteDance present at the signing. The company has not acknowledged any transaction yet. Dozens of delegates stage a walkout as Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu addresses the United Nations, declares that Israel must finish the job of eliminating any remnants of Hamas in Gaza. The death toll in Gaza stands at more than 65,500. The order book of Hindustan Aeronautics rises to 2.7 lakh crore rupees by FY27 after the government's contract to buy 97 Tejas fighter jets. HAL chief says price negotiations with General Electric has been completed and a final contract for additional 113 engines will be signed in October. That's an exclusive. After more than 6 decades in service, the Indian Air Force bids farewell to the MiG-21 fighter jets. Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh flies the last sortie with Squadron Leader Priya Sharma. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh calls it a national pride. And the Finance Ministry bids farewell to North Block, which was the administrative heartbeat of the Indian economy for nearly a century. All the departments under the ministry will now be relocated to Kartavya Bhavan by the 30th of September. Well, lots of farewells on the show, but let's start with the day's market action. The Lal Street declining for the sixth session today. Pharma and IT stocks dragged the Nifty lower below the 24,700 mark. That was the story for the Nifty particularly. Broader markets underperformed. Mid-caps fell over 1,000 points today, down by over 2%. The Nifty small-cap index also lost 2% and a 700-point cut there for the Sensex and a percent gone on the Nifty for the week. The Sensex and the Nifty have posted the worst weekly fall in nearly 6 months, with both the indices down by about 2.5%. And look at the Nifty IT index. That's the Trump effect, the H1B impact there. The Nifty IT index down by 8% for the week, while the Nifty Pharma index fell 5% for the week, largely on account of the move that we saw today, even though there is no impact or very limited or minimal impact for the Indian pharma sector on account of that 100% tariff announcement from President Trump, because that's on branded and patented drugs, and the Indian industry is largely generic. But more on that coming up for you in just a bit. Let's go across to Prashant now. He's joining us for the market action. Week close, not just this Friday, but for the week. Prashant, what does the next week look like?
Well, a painful week, no other way to put it. And in a way, today was the culmination, the climax, or whatever you want to call it, for what started as a bit of a slow burn, but then really picked up into the last few trading sessions or so. But at no point through the course of the week was there enthusiasm or a turn, intraday bounces maybe, but nothing beyond that. So, Nifty down about, 2.7% for the week. Nifty Bank down 2%, mid-cap index 5%, and the small-cap index down 5% this week as well. all sectors in the red. I mean, the sector which lost the least was metals index, but that was also down 1%. The top losers, of course, IT services, down 8%. Real estate lost about 6%. 5% cut for the Pharma index week to week. Of course, bulk of it coming in on Friday, and the capital market index also losing about 5% in trade. Large caps, few gainers, but nothing very large. Maruti was up a little bit, and one or two more names. Tech Mahindra, the big losers, right? Further cuts. Tech Mahindra 10%, TCS 8.5%, Wipro down 8%, and that's how all of this showed up on the IT services index. And then I sort of broadened the gaze to look at NSE 500, and I counted 20 names outside of what I already mentioned with cuts of over 10%. So I'll just sort of, and of course, technology here as well. Coforge, top of the list with a 14% cut this week. LT Foods down 13%. Kaplan Point down 12%. Emphasis down 11%. Reddington down 11.5%. Sumitomo Chemicals down 11%. Kalyan Jewelers down 11%. Laurus down 11%. Balrampur down 11%. And there are more, as I said, 20 double-digit losers today.
Well, plenty of losers today. Prashant, many thanks for joining us. But let's talk about the rupee hitting a record low against the US dollar in early trade. Towards the close, most losses were paired and the rupee ended at 88.71 to the greenback. 10-year bond prices declined marginally in trade today. Now, the government plans to borrow 6.77 lakh crore rupees in the second half of this fiscal year, which is slightly lower than estimates. This will be done via dated securities, including 10,000 crore rupees. Through the issuance of sovereign green bonds, the market borrowing will be completed through 22 weekly auctions. And speaking to CNBC TV 18, the DEA Secretary Anuradha Thakur said the government is committed to meeting the fiscal deficit target of 4.4%. However, Q2 growth could be slightly tempered. That is the view coming in from the DEA Secretary. Now, US President Donald Trump has fired a fresh salvo on Big Pharma. The US government has imposed a 100% tariff on branded or patented drug imports. Now, this will come into effect from the 1st of October. However, the government has clarified that these tariffs won't hurt a company unless they build a manufacturing factory in the US. Now, the Indian generics industry is largely unscathed by this order. Why? Because we are generic, we're not branded or patented. But select players like Sun Pharma and Wockhardt, who sell branded drugs in the US, will be impacted. Ekta's here now to explain the details. Ekta, the move largely targeting global Big Pharma.
Trump's announcement on 100% tariffs on imported, branded and patented pharma products is targeting innovator companies, say analysts, many of whom had anticipated such a policy and announced large US investments. For example, Novartis plans to invest $23 billion over the next 5 years in the US. Eli Lilly has announced 4 new sites in 2025, and Roche has begun work on a $700 million facility in the US. For India, the immediate impact is limited since the country is a major generic supplier, accounting for around 20% of global generics and 40% of the US requirements. Generic-focused firms like Dr. Reddy's, Lupin, Cipla, Aurobindo are unlikely to be directly affected, though concerns remain about the potential future measures. However, Indian companies impacted include Sun Pharma, whose branded specialty portfolio, which includes drugs like Ilumya, Odomzo, Sequoia and Winlevi, makes up around 19% of their total sales. Specialty revenues rose 17% in FY25, largely from the US. Analysts estimate that tariffs could in fact trim 5 to 10% of their EBITDA. But Sun, however, has not disclosed US production levels. It has said its existing capacity, however, is sufficient if required. That's what they had indicated in their previous analyst call. Now, Wockhardt may also be impacted as its novel antibiotic Xenic, manufactured in Europe, is set for US FDA filing. The company, as of now, lacks any US manufacturing presence, which could leave it vulnerable. The market is also wary of potential effects on CDMO players if formulation companies, in fact, redirect capital towards US capacity, reducing offshore outsourcing. Now, implementation questions remain, however, including whether the tariffs will override the US-EU trade rules that cap pharma tariffs at 15%, and whether APIs or finished products with patented APIs will fall under the tariff net. For Indian generics, Industry watchers believe that adverse steps are unlikely given the dependence of US patients on these medicines. Still, companies are hedging risks by adding onshore capacity. For example, Aurobindo's $250 million acquisition of Lannett added a CGMP facility with a large tablet capacity, while Ipca has partnered with Biosimilar Sciences in Puerto Rico for biologics. Analysts expect more acquisitions of mothballed assets as well as other assets and new capex if in case the trade tensions do persist.
Well, Ekta, many thanks for joining us. So as we're pointing out, the move aimed at global big pharma, the impact on generics companies at this point in time is minimal. It was not just big pharma. A slew of items were targeted by the president with additional tariffs. Imported kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities face a 50% tariff. Upholstered furniture also faces a 30% tariff, and heavy trucks face a 25% tariff. This will come into effect from the 1st of October. President Trump defending the decision, claiming unfair outside competition. The Trump administration is also planning to reduce the reliance on semiconductors made abroad. According to the Wall Street Journal, the White House is considering a plan to mandate a 1:1 ratio of domestically manufactured to imported semiconductors. What this means is a company will be allowed to export semiconductors only if it supplies the same number of chips to US companies. Any company failing to meet this ratio will face tariffs, but this is not an announcement yet. This is likely, is what the Wall Street Journal reports. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has now returned to India after a 3-day visit to the US. This was his first visit since the 50% tariffs were imposed. Minister Goyal met the United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer as well as Sergio Gore. He is the incoming ambassador from the US to India. The Commerce Ministry said that both sides have agreed to continue the engagement. Abhimanyu is here with more. Abhi.
Government sources have indicated that the date and venue of the next round of trade negotiations between India and the United States has not been finalized yet. However, things are on track and efforts are underway to meet the fall deadline for the first tranche of a mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement between both the sides. Also, sources indicated that there is an impact of pharmaceutical tariffs which have been imposed by the United States, and the impact is being studied. Now, both the sides are currently in negotiations. Earlier, between the 22nd and the 24th of September, a trade delegation headed by India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal had visited the United States. He had met the US trade representative as well as the US ambassador designate to India. Meetings were held between the government officials as well as India's negotiating team, and India's minister had held meetings with several business delegations within the United States too. The statement which had been issued by the ministry earlier had indicated that both the sides had exchanged views on possible contours of the deal, and it was decided to continue the engagements with a view to achieve an early conclusion of a mutually beneficial trade agreement.
A great way to build and strengthen a constituency in the United States, to make friends, to spur voices to speak out, is frankly to buy more stuff. Whether it's oil and gas, or it's agricultural goods, or it's defense products, or it's airplanes. You know, the more that India sort of shows its relevance and utility to this restructuring of the American economy and how the world's largest consumer market sees itself and how it projects itself into the world, the more India will be viewed as a friend, and the friends are the ones that get the preferential treatment from the United States.
And staying with President Trump, he met Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the country's Army Chief Asif Munir at the Oval Office. The talks were attended by Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and lasted for 90 minutes. Trump praised both Sharif and Munir ahead of the meeting, calling them great leaders. The White House has not released any details about the meeting. However, Pakistan's Prime Minister's office has said both leaders also discussed counter-terrorism cooperation and the possibility of new U.S. investments in Pakistan. And President Trump has also signed an executive order outlining the terms of a deal to transfer TikTok to American ownership under the plan. U.S. investors will take majority control of TikTok's operations along with a licensed copy of its powerful recommendation algorithm. American companies are expected to own about 65% of the new U.S. entity, while ByteDance and Chinese investors will hold less than 20%. However, no representatives from Chinese parent ByteDance were present at the signing, and the company has not acknowledged any transaction so far.
This is going to be American operated all the way. And great respect for President Xi, and I very much appreciate that he approved the deal, because to get it done properly, we really needed the support of China and the approval of China. The biggest reason is that it's owned by Americans, and very sophisticated Americans, and people that love the country, and very smart Americans too. So they don't want anything like that to happen, yes.
Well, that's President Trump there. Now, JSW Steel will retain Bhushan Steel. After all, the Supreme Court has overturned its own decision in a landmark verdict. The apex court ruled that the purpose of the bankruptcy code was achieved and it would be disastrous to undo the 20,000 crore rupee deal. However, shares of JSW Steel saw only a brief spike in intraday trade and closed in the red like the rest of the market. Ashmit is standing by with more. Ashmit, a significant development there with the Supreme Court overturning its own verdict, upholding the IBC, relief also for JSW Steel.
Well, a big win coming in for JSW Steel, the Supreme Court overturning its own judgment, allowing for their resolution plan of 19,700 crore rupees to sail through with respect to Bhushan Power and Steel. Now, there are plenty of findings which came in JSW's favor. Number one, the Supreme Court said that whatever delays took place in the implementation of this resolution plan was not because of the lenders, was not because of JSW Steel. It was due to ED investigations into the company. And that's important, given as how in May, when the Supreme Court had scrapped the resolution plan, it had cited delays as a major factor. That's number one. Number two, the Supreme Court cites the status of Bhushan Power and Steel, saying that it was a loss-making, defaulting company. Then JSW Steel came into the picture, brought in thousands of crores, brought in employees, and has turned the company around into a profit-making entity, and said that JSW cannot be penalized for that, should not be penalized, and citing that as a reason for allowing the resolution plan to sail through. That's number two. Number three, in the course of hearing these proceedings, the lenders had changed their position. They had now cited additional payment of 6,100 crore rupees. Their argument was that, the company, that's Bhushan Power and Steel, clocked an EBITDA during the pendency of the insolvency proceedings, and that money should flow towards the lenders. That argument, too, has been struck down by the apex court, the Supreme Court saying no case has been made out for any additional payment to be made by JSW Steel. So on all counts, a major victory coming in for JSW Steel and its resolution plan for Bhushan Power and Steel.
Ashmit, many thanks. And staying with Court Corner, shares of Vodafone Idea slumped over 8% in intraday trade after the Supreme Court deferred the AGR case to the 6th of October. This comes after the centre asked for more time from the top court. Earlier, the Supreme Court had deferred its hearing from last week on the 19th of September to today, now moving it to the 6th of October. The Defence Ministry's order for 97 Tejas fighter airjet will take HAL's order book to 2.7 lakh crore rupees in FY27. The company's chief, DK Sunil, says a contract with General Electric to supply additional 113 engines will be signed in October.
We have already made an investment of almost 2,000 crores over the past few years. We have 2 lines in Bangalore producing 8 each aircraft. And the third line at Nasik, we've spent close to 700 crores to expand that and make it another line producing capable of producing 8, and the first aircraft will roll out this month from that line.
That's HAL on its plans for the Tejas. After more than 62 years in service, India's battle-tested MiG-21 fighter flew into the sunset one last time. In a glorious farewell, the ceremony was held at the Chandigarh Air Force Station, where the aircraft was first inducted 6 decades ago. Air Chief Marshal AP Singh flew the last sortie along with Squadron Leader Priya Sharma. An elite skydiving team of the Indian Air Force descended from a height of 8,000 feet as the MiG-21 aircraft flew past, receiving an aerial salute. The jet belongs to the number 23 Squadron, which were nicknamed Panthers. They were given a water salute after landing. The Indian Air Force first supersonic fighter jet played a pivotal role in the 1965 and 1971 wars, also in the 1999 Kargil War, and even the Balakot strikes in 2019.
MiG-21 ने मिलिट्री एविएशन की जर्नी में कई और प्राउड मोमेंट्स यानी गौरव के क्षण जोड़े हैं। दुनिया के मिलिट्री एविएशन के इतिहास में ऐसा कोई फाइटर जेट नहीं हुआ जो इतनी बड़ी संख्या में निर्मित हुआ। दुनिया भर में MiG-21 के 11,500 से अधिक विमान बनाए गए और उनमें से लगभग 850 विमान भारतीय वायुसेना का ही वो हिस्सा रहे हैं।
इसके साथ जो साथ मिला इस जहाज का, वो एक मैं कह सकता हूँ कि भूल नहीं सकता हूँ कभी।
ये बोलते हुए मुझे बहुत गर्व है कि इस मशीन पे मैंने पूरे 20 साल काम किया और बहुत ही अच्छी मशीन है।
MiG-21 has been a part of us. Like, you know, when we started flying, this was the aircraft that got us into the, you know, Indian Air Force. It was the one that taught us the basic skills of flying.
बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, बहुत लंबा समय बिताया मैंने MiG-21 के साथ में, बहुत अच्छी मेमोरीज है मेरी और बहुत खुशी है कि यहाँ पे वापस आया और उस एयरक्राफ्ट को देखा जिसके साथ मैं बड़ा हुआ हूँ और ग्रो किया हूँ.
We delivered more than what we thought it will deliver, both in 65, 71, as late as Balapur, and even the latest Sindoor, they were all involved.
Big global story, dozens of delegates staging a walkout after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations. He declared that Israel must finish the job of eliminating any remnants of Hamas in Gaza. The death toll in Gaza stands at more than 65,500.
We're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
Netanyahu at the UN. Shares of L&T rose in trade after the Telangana government agreed to take over phase 1 of the Hyderabad Metro rail project from the L&T group. In addition, the government will pay 2,000 crore rupees to the company towards its equity investment and assume the outstanding debt of 13,000 crore rupees. Now, the RBI's directed buy now, pay later startup Simple to immediately cease all payment operations. The central bank says the firm did not have the necessary authorization to function as a payment system operator. This comes after the Enforcement Directorate initiated proceedings against the company and its founder director Nityanand Sharma under the Foreign Exchange Management Act earlier this year. Maruti Suzuki is planning to launch an EMI scheme at just under 2,000 rupees a month in a bid to draw first-time car buyers. The move follows an unprecedented response since the GST cuts. The automaker tells CNBC TV 18 bookings for small cars have risen by nearly 50%. India's largest FMCG company, Hindustan Unilever, expects flat to low single-digit growth in the second quarter of this fiscal. Shilpa joining us now with more. Shilpa, why this warning on growth from HUL, and is that what we're hearing from other FMCG companies as well on account of transition issues?
Well, you're absolutely right there, Shireen. You know, India's largest FMCG company is bracing for a short-term hit this quarter, and this is because of the latest GST cuts. Now, from soaps, shampoos to toothpaste, hair oil, talcum powder, even lifestyle nutrition, nearly 40% of HUL's portfolio now attracts just 5% GST, down from 12 or 18 earlier. Now, that's great news for consumers, and HUL is already passing on that benefit to consumers through lower prices and even better value right from 22nd of September. Now, this move also the company believes in the long term will drive demand and consumption. But in the short run, this reset has disrupted the supply chain. Distributors and retailers, they're holding back from fresh orders to clear the old stock. And consumers are delaying pantry buys, waiting for cheaper prices to hit the shelves. And this is something that we will see across the industry as all players are trying to move from the older MRPs to the new MRPs as the new GST rates come into effect. So HUL says that September sales have taken a knock, and this impact could also extend into October, and it expects Q2 growth to be flat to low single digits. But the company is calling this a one-off blip, and it's betting on the recovery from November as prices stabilize, and this is something that we're expected to see across the industry as well. And next quarter onwards, growth is expected to stabilize as the new prices come in and as that drives consumption coming back for the entire FMCG industry. Back to you.
All right, Shilpa, many thanks. Now, India's chess contingent is making all the right moves. Checkmating competition across the world. Grandmaster R. Vaishali made history last week, becoming the first Indian to successfully defend the women's Grand Swiss title. The victory earned her a spot in next year's candidates tournament and a chance to face the reigning world champion. CNBC TV 18's Archana Solanki caught up with the Grandmaster herself and the legendary Vishwanathan Anand, who trained her at his academy.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the way I played in the Grand Swiss, and it's my second win. I think the previous year, 23 Grand Swiss win took me some time to process because back then candidates was not in my plan at all. It just happened that I won the 23 Grand Swiss and qualified for candidates. But this time when I went for the tournament, I really wanted to win. But yeah, I'm very happy, like everything went as per plan.
Vishy sir, you were telling me about how the celebrations are like at WACA when your students make India proud.
Obviously, it's a big relief. Typically, we've been following the game till the matter is kind of resolved. You're tense, and then afterwards, you're tense to see if the final result actually matches, that nothing goes wrong and the conversion is. And then you sit back and feel good about, because you know each of these things doesn't happen in one day. There's a lot of months of work and so on. And so you kind of relive that experience, so to speak.
No, why I asked, because I've seen your Gukesh and your dance video at Pune at somebody's wedding. So which is why I thought, I'm sure scenes at WACA are very, fun, and, people actually let loose and start.
My dance at the wedding is unrepresentative of what I do at WACA, I must assure you, but otherwise, yes, we are very happy.
I'm so glad.
Well, that's Vishwanathan Anand with R. Vaishali, and of course, great news for her and for the Vishwanathan Anand Academy. And before we wrap this edition of India Business Hour, the Finance Ministry has bid farewell to North Block, which was the administrative heartbeat of the Indian economy for nearly a century. All departments under the ministry will now be relocated to Kartavya Bhavan by the 30th of September. All the officials of the Finance Ministry were present for a photo op to mark the occasion. We leave you with these images of North Block. I'm certainly going to miss it. It's been the location and the venue for many of our interviews, especially during the budget season and during the budget time. So it's goodbye to North Block and hello to Kartavya Bhavan. Thanks very much for watching.